See beefed up bail reform for violent criminals.
We targeted the worst offenders, the repeat offenders, the frequent flyers, those that come back to commit one crime after another. And we see this phenomenon now reversed as this government has allowed those frequent flyer criminals to go back out on the street again and again.
Addressing the particular challenges posed by repeat violent offenders requires a comprehensive approach. In the coming days, I will be reaching out to justice and public safety counterparts to convene an urgent FPT meeting to continue our important work on bail.
Calls for reform increased after OPP Constable Greg Purchala was gunned down in late December after responding to a vehicle in distress call. The man who's facing first-degree murder charges in that case was previously released on bail with a number of conditions, including not possessing firearms. Will the government bring in stricter bail restrictions for violent offenders? Gary Ananda Sangari is the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Justice. Rob Moore is the Conservative justice critic. We requested an MP from the NDP, but no one was made available for our program. Mr. Ananda Sangari, I'm going to start with you. Minister Lametti had said he'll call an urgent meeting to discuss this issue with his provincial and territorial counterparts to discuss bail reform. Do you think changes need to be made?
Well, I think it's clear that there are some issues within our bail system. We've had these discussions now since October with our provincial counterparts. As you know, the province of British Columbia has made some significant steps in November. We know I represent the city of Toronto, Scarborough, and I know I hear from many constituents about the issues, whether it be in the TTC or recent unfortunate death of one of your former colleagues, Michael Finley, as well as the horrific death of Constable Purchala. I think it's really brought home a message that we need to work on bail reform, but importantly, I think we need to work together collectively, both in Parliament as well as with the provinces and territories, because the issue of bail is something that is a mixed jurisdiction. We have certain responsibilities federally. We also have the provinces that have a great deal of responsibility towards the administration of justice. So we look forward to working together to get to the right place, to ensure that we have a system of bail that is fair, that is accessible, but that is also make sure that those with criminal past are not allowed to, if they pose a risk to society, they're not let out into the community.
And Mr. Moore, you're hearing from the Liberals that, you know, there is room for change here. What is it that your party wants to see, whether it's a legislative change or a non-legislative change?
Well, what we have is a situation where our bail system is badly broken now. Bill C-75 in 2019 made it easier for individuals to get bail that really shouldn't have bail. In the tragic but preventable death of the OPP constable, the individual who killed him was not only out on bail but had a lifetime firearms prohibition. So this individual shouldn't have been out on bail, and had they been in custody, that is a loss of life that could have been prevented. So we need to roll back some of those provisions that put too much of an onus on the prosecution to show why an individual should remain in custody. We have a situation in Toronto now where out of the 44 shooting homicides last year, half of them, the individuals were out on bail. I mean, that is absolutely unacceptable. These are individuals who were had committed a crime, had been arrested, had been taken into custody, but then were back on the street. So virtually half of those homicides could have been prevented.
Mr. Ananda Sangari, do you see that is the problem? It was that bill that was passed in 2019. Is that the root of the problem here? Or do you see another issue where you think things should change?
There are a number of issues. And Katie, look, it's easy to just drop numbers and dropping numbers without substantiating them. We've seen that throughout the debate.
That was Toronto Police that raised that. That was Toronto Police that came out with that information.
Yeah, so in terms of Bill C-75, the amendments made in Bill C-75, in fact, strengthened bail conditions. So, in fact, if you had involved in a domestic situation, domestic violence, then there was a reverse onus on the individual seeking bail to demonstrate that they do not pose a risk, whereas the preemptive assumption is that somebody who is charged, the Crown has to show cause to release, not to release the individual. In C-75, we also strengthened for certain types of firearms offenses. So again, reverse onus imposed on those individuals. So I think there's room, maybe to strengthen that and go even further. But it's unfair to say that C-75 is what's caused the situation today. I think there are issues that both the federal government and the provincial and territorial governments need to address. And I think over the next several weeks we will do that with the minister today confirming that he will be calling an emergency meeting of his colleagues provincially and territorially to have this discussion. But even going backwards to October, we've had these engagements and discussions. Our officials have been working on it strenuously now for the past several months. When we see, obviously the last several weeks have not been good. They've been, quite heart-wrenching to see, but we can't make policy just based on this. We need to have experts weigh in. We need to have proper evidence-based decision-making, and I think that's what we're working towards. And I have no doubt that we have a parliamentary committee that is meeting on this, a proposal that's brought forward by Mr. Moore, in fact, and supported by all parties, wherein we will be studying bail reform. So I think there are a number of outlets that are kind of working on this parallelly, and I think it's about, from a government perspective, it's for us to bring everything together towards what type of concrete measures need to be taken to address the issue of bail.
Mr. Moore, go ahead.
Yeah, it's very rare that you have 13 premiers of different political stripes agree on any one thing. And 13 premiers from 10 provinces and 3 territories have called on this federal government, not for more meetings. There's been lots of meetings. They've identified the problem. They're pointing to the changes made in Bill C-75 to creating a virtual catch and release system where the same offenders are being arrested over and over. And in 2021 in Toronto, there was 46 gun-related individuals who were arrested for a gun crime, given bail, rearrested for a gun crime while on bail, and then given bail again. So these are repeat, serious, violent offenders that shouldn't be out on bail. They are a danger when they're out on bail. So Bill C-75 put the onus onto the prosecution to show why someone couldn't have a less onerous bail, and it's resulted in judges releasing people that shouldn't be released, including the individual that killed this OPP constable. So the evidence is all around us that our streets are not safe, that our police officers are not safe, and in every province we have unanimity that there needs to be change right now to our bail laws. And Canadians really can't wait. I mean, violent crime is up 32% in the last 8 years. Gang-related homicides are up almost 100% in the last 8 years. So the evidence is in, and a lot of the blame has to be laid at our bail system.
Now, Justice Minister David Lametti, when he was talking about this today, he said that that there are no easy answers here. The answers are not they're not simple to get to, and he accused the opposition of playing politics with tragedy. How do you respond to that?
You know, I think that's kind of head in the sand type of thinking. We asked Minister Lametti on Monday, on Tuesday, to respond to what the premiers and police officers were asking for, and it's almost a case of victim blaming. He says, "Well, the provinces have a role, the police have a role."
Like, do they not have a role though?
The main starting point in our bail system is the law in the criminal code. The judges have to deal with the criminal code as they find it. The criminal code now has created a situation where it is very difficult to keep these violent offenders behind bar in pretrial custody. Police are very frustrated because they will arrest somebody and then they'll be let right back out, and they will not only have to rearrest them for committing another serious offense. And in Vancouver alone, there was 3,000 arrests for the same 40 people. So these are the same offenders offending over and over and over. Meanwhile, communities are being victimized. And the soft on crime approach is not working, and there is a strong leadership role for the federal government to take, and that starts with bail reform.
So
I was going to say, I'm going to jump in. This is our last answer here, but how would you respond to that, and where do things go from here?
Look, I think, in terms of the provinces, there's definitely a role for the provinces to play. Minister Lametti met with Minister Sharma, who's his colleague in British Columbia. They outlined many of the very important steps that they've taken since November, including an integrated system that will bring together police, crown attorneys, and mental health experts to manage the bail systems. I think there's many more levers that the provinces have, and there's certainly a role for the federal government. I think, just to be clear, we have been, since we took government in 2015, have been making incremental, progressive legislative changes that's meant to be a smart response to crime, not knee-jerk reactions, not based on statistics that are not validated. It's based on actual informed by experts decision-making. So that's why we brought in Bill C-5 earlier or late last year, and changes to Bill C-75. In C-75 were critical in ensuring that those, for example, situations in domestic violence, there's a reverse onus, which means that the accused has to demonstrate that they do not pose a risk. As a right, bail is generally a right that's enshrined in the Charter. You cannot, there is a presumption of innocence, and I think those are principles that most Canadians will agree are very important in a free and democratic society. And in order for us to balance those rights with absolute need to keep our communities safe, there's a need for us to move in a very logical and incremental way, and I think that's the way we're moving. C-75 was a very important start in that direction, including addressing issues of firearms.
All right, we're going to leave the conversation there. I'd like to thank you both for coming into the studio and sharing your perspectives. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.